When we're thinking of Peter Mandelson, or rather thinking of the story which has just come out of the United States about Peter Mandelson being described as a moron, I think it's worth putting Mandelson in context. There probably isn't a worst ever British ambassador, though maybe you've got some ideas. I remember I used to live in a house in the Cotswolds next to a former ambassador, and we had very pleasant chats. But you know, the evaluation of an ambassador depends on your perspective and your historical context. But Sir Neville Henderson, Britain's ambassador to Germany from 1937 to 1939, is frequently criticised for his ineffective and perceived misjudgment during a critical period in history. So, first of all, he's accused of being overly sympathetic to Adolf Hitler and the Nazi regime, and it sort of sums up that period of appeasement. His diplomatic stance was aligned with British policy under Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain, but he sort of took it to heart. He lived the part. And this approach sought to avoid war at all costs by accommodating Hitler's territorial ambitions, a strategy widely discredited after World War II began. For example, he played a key role in facilitating the 1938 Munich Agreement, where Britain and France conceded the Sudetenland region of Czechoslovakia to Germany without Czechoslovakia's input. And while the agreement temporarily delayed the war, it emboldened Hitler. In his memoir, Failure of a Mission, Henderson expressed admiration for Hitler's determination, claiming he had been misunderstood by the West. Critics would argue that this mindset blinded Henderson to the true threat posed by Nazi Germany. And with hindsight, well, hindsight is a great game. Henderson reportedly ignored or downplayed warnings about Germany's aggressive intentions, and his close relationship with German officials led him to underestimate Hitler's willingness to wage war. In the months leading up to World War II, specifically, he repeatedly assured London that Hitler's demands were negotiable, even as Germany prepared to invade Poland. This misjudgment contributed to Britain's ill preparation for war. And during the Sudeten crisis in 1938 and the lead-up to Germany's invasion of Poland in 1939, Henderson's attempts to mediate between Britain and Germany were seen as futile with hindsight. He was criticised for lacking the ability to confront the Nazi leadership effectively. In 1939, for example, he met with Hitler and Joachim von Ribbentrop, Germany's foreign minister, in Berlin to avert the war. His failure to persuade Hitler not to invade Poland demonstrated the limits of his influence and his inability, his foolishness. Henderson's contemporaries in British politics and diplomacy criticised his actions. Winston Churchill, in particular, opposed the policy of appeasement and indirectly criticised Henderson's role in enabling it. Historians have described him as naive and ill-suited for a post requiring firm resolve against a totalitarian regime. He was appointed in 1937. He published his memoir in 1940, defending his actions, but admitting that appeasement, his policy, the policy that he pursued, had failed. And his efforts to mediate before the invasion of Poland failed. And the Munich Agreement, which was signed in September, it was something that he played a significant role, signed in September 1938, was something that he played a significant role in negotiating. And while Henderson isn't the sole architect of appeasement, his tenure as ambassador during one of Britain's most critical diplomatic failures tarnishes his reputation and stands as an image of what an ambassador should not be. And now let's consider Peter Mandelson, Lord Peter Mandelson's recent appointment as Britain's ambassador in Washington, a decision sparking polarised reactions both domestically and across the Atlantic. And while some have heralded Mandelson as the ideal political operator for turbulent times, others, like the Trump campaign strategist Chris LaCivita, decry him as a moron. Have I pronounced his name correctly? I don't know. Do I care? No, not really. This appointment begs the question, can Mandelson help repair Britain's international standing as the double debacles of Brexit and Liz Truss, and Liz Truss's fleeting premiership sort of pass through our hands like wet slime? Or does his controversial legacy risk dragging us further into global irrelevance? Mandelson, affectionately dubbed the Prince of Darkness for his political cunning, is no stranger to controversy. Twice sacked from Tony Blair's government, tied to Jeffrey Epstein in later revelations, criticised for his links to China during his EU Trade Commissioner days. Mandelson carries enough baggage to build to build a shop, to fill the entire luggage collection area in Heathrow. But his backers argue that his experience in international trade and political strategy equips him to navigate the frosty waters of a Trump-led Washington. Yet his past comments, branding Trump a white nationalist and a danger to the world, do little to endear him to the incoming administration. La Civita's public ridicule and warnings that Mandelson could be locked out of key discussions illustrate the diplomatic tightrope that he now faces. He wanted this job. What does he have to contribute, other than some sort of name recognition? It leads one to wonder whether his sharp tongue might undermine his effectiveness in a role requiring diplomacy above all. He's not trained as a diplomat. He's trained as a politician, somebody who steals the headlines rather than the prize. Post-Brexit Britain is already viewed as diminished on the world stage. Gone are the days when the UK stood as a bridge between the EU and the US, shot in our own foot by ourselves in 2016. Instead, we grapple with trade barriers, reputational damage, diminished clout, and the economic missteps of Liz Truss, that memory of stupidity, which was so boldly written on the day she sat in front of Sergei Lavrov and tried to teach Lavrov his own geography, claiming that Rostov-on-Don, that city that was hit by Ukraine the other day, was actually Ukrainian territory, not Russian territory. Mandelson's appointment, while bold, risks reinforcing the image of a nation reliant on political bigwigs who can't really manage to read their paperwork, who don't bother doing the detail, recycling past glory rather than fostering fresh talent or stability or indeed common sense. To his credit, Mandelson's trade expertise could be crucial in averting Trump's proposed tariffs and shaping a new economic agreement centered on digital services. His appointment signals an intent to prioritize heavyweight diplomacy, albeit one shadowed by his history. Keir Starmer's gamble rests on the belief that Mandelson's ruthlessness and connections will open doors, even with an administration fundamentally skeptical of him. However, the optics are troubling. And to have somebody on the day after he was appointed, on the day he was appointed, calling him a moron is troubling, deeply troubling. Critics note that Mandelson's ties to Beijing, his reluctance to back legislation on Chinese human rights abuses, and his history with the EU make him a dubious choice for dealing with Trump's America First ethos. Furthermore, Nigel Farage, Trump's self-styled British confidant, looms as a potential disruptor, hosting high-profile inauguration events and positioning himself as the UK's preferred intermediary. The Farage factor risks sidelining Mandelson in Washington's corridors of power. In short, can it get any worse? Well, yes. But that hardly absolves us from trying to improve. Mandelson's appointment is less a solution and more a reflection of Britain's predicament. We are a nation still grappling with the consequences of self-inflicted wounds, Brexit's economic fallout, political instability, and a strained relationship with our closest allies, both geographically and politically. Whether Mandelson succeeds or falters, the mere necessity of such a contentious figure at a time of international crisis underscores the depths to which Britain's reputation has actually fallen. Mandelson's tenure as ambassador is not an easy solution. It's an uphill battle, and the odds are not in his favour. Yet his appointment is a microcosm of modern Britain, ambitious, divisive, desperately clinging to the vestiges of a once-admired global role, desperate for name recognition. Mandelson, people will remember that one. Can he defy expectations and rebuild bridges with a Trump administration, or will his appointment mark yet another chapter in Britain's post-Brexit decline? Either way, Mandelson's saga may be the perfect metaphor for Britain's current state, polarised, precarious, and against all odds desperate to stay relevant.